June 27th, Planning and Development Committee meeting. We have a quorum, but we'll do a roll call in for those at home or on Zoom. We're all here? Okay. We have a quorum, so we'll move to approval of the minutes. Can someone make a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes of the regular Planning and Development Committee meeting of June 13th, 2022.
Second.
All right. Any changes? Are we good? All right. Seeing none. Oh, I forgot. So we'll do a voice vote with this. All those in favor of approving these minutes,
Aye.
say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. Has anyone signed up? Yes. Ms. Payton. Anybody online?
Yeah, there's one.
Good evening. Funny how you want to enact a one-year moratorium on private tree removal after the woman on Emerson and Jackson cut down approximately 50-plus trees a few months ago. Is that fair or equitable? Black people, pack your bags. Don't believe the hype. Your representatives pretend they care about anti-displacement and anti-gentrification. I live at Emerson and East Railroad. Not my neighborhood used to be low to mid-income black. We live by the city dump, the dog pound, and the Levy Center. We had the first chicken shack, the black YMCA because black people couldn't go to the one on Grove, and the first black livery service. The city of Evanston decided to create a research park, and black people had to go. They said it would create 4,000 new jobs. Will happen. Eminent domain appears, and my neighbors disappeared. 30 years later, no research park. Instead, I'm the only house left. My new neighbors are Northwestern, E2, the Reserve, Truly, the Link, the Avatar, 1717 Ridge, Grand Bend, Farmers Market, and more. Black people, black business, black opportunity is gone. So while your aldermen are leading you to believe that they are anti-gentrification and anti-displacement, let their actions show you tonight by their votes that the same is not true. I am living proof and the only one black person left on my block. Black lives matter all the time, not sometimes.
Mr. Sutton.
Good evening, Carlos Sutton, 5th Ward. I've had the opportunity to observe the census reports over the last 40 years, 1990, 2000, 2010, and more recently, 2020. I don't need a census report to let me know what's going on in my neighborhood. All I have to do is look out the front door and see that people who used to be my neighbors and own homes are no longer here. Now, your past practices of redlining, where you picked up my grandfather's house and moved it from the 7th Ward to the 5th Ward, is no longer in practice. But I'm concerned about, we talk about reparations, it is now more of an economic issue with me than it is a color issue. Many of the black people I know in my age group are losing their homes. Many of their children can't afford the taxes to maintain them. And I think it's a criminal crime that we are having families in our black community sell their homes and their children go somewhere to rent. I don't know what policies you can put in effect, that would stop this rapid increase and decreasing of black population in Evanston. By the 2030 census, this might not even be an issue.
And online, we have Mr. Vasilko. Mike Vasilko, are you with us? All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was calling about item P2. So, apparently is being given, or the item is for considering a special use permit for Beacon Academy, which is a private institution. My understanding is they are for-profit, so they're not tax exempt. My questions are, does the city lose any property taxes as a result of this special use? And I'd like to confirm that the city is not funding any portion of this project on paper now or in the future when it comes to this special use. Thank you very much.
Ms. Fisher, Mrs. Fisher, Sherry Fisher. Sherry Fisher, are you on the line? All right, we're going to move on to Doreen Price.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I signed up for D1 and D2, and I'm having a hard time copying pasting, so I don't know if there's the PDF files can be more user-friendly that way. So I'm basically going off these paragraphs instead of all the information that's in the packet relative to these two things, so I apologize. With regard to D1, as I remember, we're talking about the anti-displacement and gentrification efforts, which we know is a serious problem throughout, and many speakers have already eloquently and personally have attested to. And it's happening throughout other wards as well. And ARPA funds hopefully will be used to find places to help so that people who are here and want to stay here can stay here and have been put on the shelf for way too long, and why ARPA funds were initiated. And so giving more help to the Fifth Ward is just that most outstanding thing we can do. And also allowing people to live in other wards would be really an honor, in a way, to honor the commitment that when we do something that doesn't adversely affect anyone throughout the city. And those two things go together with the next item, and that has to do, what is the definition of equity when we discuss the Evanston Environmental Board's proposal, and if there's trees that will be cut down, they'll be cut down on the basis of someone's definition of danger, which I know personally. You can have many directors or whatever review something, and it slips through when you lose a tree. And 200-year-old white swamp oak is a significant loss. I'm still suffering from that, and will suffer, continue to suffer, unless there's a solution to it. And again, it's going to be through trying to find a way to compensate for that loss, maybe through gardening or whatever, in other ways, but emotionally and everything else, that's really difficult to assess. So what everybody says about the city doing things in ways without their input, when they're pushing back and saying, no, it's wrong, that's the trauma of City of Evanston. And if you've not had that done to you because you get along, or, in terms of professional or whatever, with your colleagues, and you keep it at a level that's outside of the human level, which is the rest of us, because you're being professional. I know, I was a scientist, right? If you forget about the human level, we devolve into this legal institution of whether or not we need to do this versus should do it. And so I'm just saying it on these two items alone, it summarizes a whole SLU addresses the need to rise to something better and to take these funds and to help as many people, and far more than what the Evanston Care Network is currently helping, because that solution is very limited, and we should have a grant maker in place, especially with the ARPA funds, to make sure that we can help more, including Devin's concern about the Fifth Ward as well. It includes everybody, a grant maker would. So that's my...
Ms. Price, if you could conclude your
suggestion.
comments, thank you.
Yes, so that's it, Bobby, sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's basically it, so thank you.
Thank you. And then one more time to Sherry Fisher. Is she's back on? No? Okay. All right. That concludes public comment. Moving on to items for consideration. P1 resolution, or can someone move approval of P1?
Move approval. Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none. Can we just do a
Voice vote.
voice vote on this too? All right. Voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the ayes have it. Can someone move P2, please?
So moved.
I will second item P2.
All right, any discussion? Councilmember Newsom.
Yes, we do have some discussion. I understand the applicant is here to make a quick presentation. And just as a heads up, I'm going to make a motion to hold this until our next meeting so we can sort out some legalese regarding the cigarette, the sales ban issue.
Thank you. Is this?
It's on.
I'm on. There we go. My name is Steve Friedland. I'm an attorney with Applegate and Thorne Thompson in Chicago, here on behalf of Beacon Academy. Beacon's request, as many of you know, Beacon currently has its main campus and resides at 1574 Sherman Avenue. They've been there for the last 6 years. Prior to that, Beacon occupied space on Davis Street at 622 Davis for a couple of years. The school that is currently compromises about 21,000 square feet of space on Sherman. And the purpose of this application is the school is looking to expand and provide some additional space for basically an art room, an art gallery, and has found space at 1026 Davis, right around the corner from Sherman, walking distance from the school. The proposal is to lease approximately 4,200 square feet in the building, and that will allow them to develop basically 2 classrooms and some storage space, some lobby area in the front. The students and staff would walk back and forth between the school, the main school, and this. As you probably have seen from the proposed ordinance, there are some conditions that we discussed with both DAPR and the Land Use Commission, all of which Beacon is fine with, which is basically to ensure that this is not a main drop-off or pickup location for the school. The day will begin at the main campus. This is really sort of an ancillary location. Council member, to your comment about the tobacco sales, I did talk with staff today and realized that there is a city provision with respect to the distance of a school from a location that sells tobacco, and it turns out that Evanston Liquors is within that distance. Obviously, that provision already has some exceptions to it. I know we'll work with staff to try to figure that out. We certainly aren't intending to see that limit anything at Evanston Liquors. There's no reason for that. So with that, I know on the line, I know Renee Ruffing is here from the school if you had any particular questions, but that's the purpose of the request.
We're in for a long evening tonight, so I will say, as the alderman of the Fourth Ward, I'm fully supportive of this. We just need to sort out the details with regards to the cigarette issue and look forward to approving this as soon as we can get to it. So I will make a motion to hold this until our next meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, to table. Hold is not.
If I'm making a motion to table till our next meeting, I guess that only requires a second vote. A second.
No, you have to
Help me out
table.
here. Let's wait, tell me what to do.
You have to table it.
Yeah, motion to table.
Holds aren't available in committee.
I will make a motion to table this until our next meeting.
Second.
Oh, okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the ayes have it. Okay, moving on to items for discussion. D1, communication or referral regarding anti-displacement. Do we need to motion this in if it's just discussion?
I'll move item D1 for discussion.
Okay. Do we need a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. I'll be quick on this because, again, we have a long night, but we, at some point, we're going to have a formal presentation about this. This was an early referral that kind of launched the Here to Stay committee, which is, or Here to Stay working group, which is a working group I put together to solely focus on identifying strategies to support longtime Evanston residents and staying here in Evanston. And as we've also discussed in this working group, also relocating Evanston residents back to Evanston who would like to be here, who have had to move away because of the rising cost of housing. And we've talked about the need to renegotiate affordability restrictions, expiring affordability restrictions on existing affordable housing projects. We've talked about accessory dwelling units, especially how to finance them. We've talked about different reform measures to our building and zoning code that can make the cost of construction more affordable. We've identified specific opportunity sites in the Fifth Ward to start, but we'll expand beyond that at some point, and really looked at the history of it to see why we haven't been able to develop on the site, to see if we can address those issues. We've heard from interested parties who are interested in building in Evanston. We've talked to people who have been forced to leave Evanston because of the cost of living and are interested in relocating back, and heard their testimonies about some of the barriers they face to finding a house, an affordable home to purchase, or anything else that disrupted their path to home ownership here in Evanston. So we'll have a kind of an official presentation at a future meeting, but I just wanted to check in as an update to that work, and looking forward to discussing it further at a future meeting. Any questions? I see Councilmember Kelly.
That sounds wonderful, and is there any collaboration with Equity Empowerment Commission?
Not at this moment, no.
So I did hear, I think it was Darlene Cannon proposed a measure like one in Chicago against predatory developers from, I think, Byron Sigcho Lopez initiated that and got that passed. So I think they were discussing that, which might be of interest at the Equity Empowerment Commission.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, this does not need any action. We'll move on to D2. Can someone move D2?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? This is discussion on the Evanston Environmental Board's proposal for a one-year moratorium of private tree removal. Do we have anyone speaking to this issue?
We do have Wendy Pollack, co-chair of the Environment Board here.
And so let's go to Councilmember Reeve first.
Well, I don't know. I certainly would love to hear what Wendy Pollack has to say first before I say anything.
And I would say let's get to questions. Do you have a question or a comment?
I was going to get right to the point of where I think we need to move, and maybe I'll, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I haven't prepared comments. I think our memo explains pretty clearly what our intention is. This has been talked about on and off for literally years. It's part of the Climate Action and Resilience Plan to protect and expand the urban tree canopy. And I think we just, going back to the purpose and intent, it's that we all benefit from the urban forest, and we all share responsibility for it, and that's the starting point. And we looked at, we've heard various proposals, including from staff a couple of years ago. We looked at Cambridge, Massachusetts as kind of a fresh approach that we think is very straightforward, very clear, and includes accommodations for some of the concerns I think staff have raised in their comment that is in your packet. So and one other thing, the reason we suggested a moratorium is simply to get it going. We think there should be a stronger tree ordinance. There is one now, as you know. It's very, very weak, applies to very, very few cases. We think there should be a stronger tree ordinance, and we are concerned about issues of equity. We think that they've addressed them, and but the moratorium is something they used in order to collect more data and make sure that they understood how much staffing would be needed and so on before they fully enacted their ordinance. So that's the reason for the moratorium, but it's not because we don't think there should be an ordinance. We do. And if you're willing to move forward with it, we would support that.
Councilmember Reed.
I'll hold my comments for now.
Councilmember Newsome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to cut straight to the chase, and I feel like we are, 90% of the way to having a long-term tree preservation ordinance in place. And rather than spending our time and energy putting a temporary moratorium into place and punting on the discussion that we're already on the 10-yard line, let's devote that time and energy to getting the ball over the goal line and just finishing the discussion on the long-term ordinance, and that's what I would prefer to do. I know that I'll be part of the Environment Board after the August Rules Committee meeting, and I would hope that that would be one of the first things we could turn our attention to and come back to council later this year with a fully baked ordinance that would have the support of the majority of the city council members. So that would be my preference.
Councilmember Ravel.
Well, I would like to second Councilmember Newsma's proposal that we skip the moratorium stage and go back to work on the draft ordinance that staff has already put a lot of time and effort into. It does need more work, but a lot of the beginning groundwork is there to work on further. I also think, both the moratorium and the tree preservation ordinance itself both would require additional staff resources, and I think it's very important that we signal right now, as staff begins to work on the 2023 budget, that we really do need to have some staff resources in the next year's budget to help us with the tree preservation ordinance itself. So I get, our climate action agenda for 2022 says that we're going to have a tree preservation ordinance this year. So I think now is the time to get to work and make that happen.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with both Councilmember Newsma and Ravel on this issue. And I do think we have been working on this for a long time. What I'm concerned about, and I'd like to ask a couple questions about the staffing capacity, because Mr. Kano, if you could let us know what would it, I see that it would take additional staffing. Sorry, my glasses are fogging. Staffing, and what's the status of your department right now?
Good evening, Chair Burns, members of the committee. Edgar Kano, Acting Public Works Agency Director. We're very low in our forestry department. Currently, we're down 25% of our workforce. That also includes our forestry supervisor. So right now, we do not have a forestry supervisor. We've had that advertised, I believe, the last 2 months, if not longer. Got a very few candidates. Again, it's just a hard market right now, job market also to get some qualified people. We've had a bunch of Forestry 3 vacancies, employee vacancies, more than 6 months, possibly 9 months. Again, nobody's.
Is there anything, are we paying enough? What's going on in the market that makes it so difficult? Can you tell?
I can't really tell. I know we're paying comparable to what other municipalities are paying. I think right now, just the job market is difficult, and there's other opportunities available to individuals, and they're choosing to go somewhere else. Again, even our applicant number hasn't been that high, and the ones that have applied, though good candidates, we felt that they weren't the best or as knowledgeable as we would like them to be for, especially for something like this. As well, our public services coordinator, Emily Okala, is still out. We hope to get her back in a couple of weeks. But right now, we're missing a lot of people in that department, especially, as I stated, the forestry supervisor, and those are our certified arborists.
Right. Is this an opportunity, I realize this would be long-term, to sort of tie into our workforce development program, where we start working with our high school students towards certification or towards being able to become a forestry worker in Evanston?
For an entry level, yes, I believe so. I don't know how it would work for someone to fill this position that's certified and
Right.
trained in order to make proper tree risk assessments and just general tree assessments. But yes, workforce development for entry level, that could be something. We're finding difficulty right now for fill our apprentices and other workforce development as well. So, it is something that we could look into. Again, it is a skilled craft.
Right.
That there are a lot of dangers, but if the applicants are there, we're willing to go out and find them.
Do you know if the private market is also experiencing that type of shortage?
I'm not aware.
Okay, yeah. It's a tough nut because, in your experience, have we ever been this low before?
Unfortunately, for public works, we've always been short-staffed. I'm trying to think back to forestry. We've had a couple of changes with the supervisors, but I don't think it's been this bad, no.
Okay, yeah. Right, so as we look forward in the budget process, we need to figure out how do we sweeten the deal, or how do we make it so that Tree City actually attracts more forestry workers.
Definitely. Yeah, and there's positions open right now, so if anyone's listening, please feel free to apply.
Okay.
So.
All right, yes.
Councilmember
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Thank you. So I just want to point out that identifying trees that need to come down is very, very different than having an ordinance where trees have to remain up. And I know one of the proposals that was discussed at one of the environmental board meetings was that it would be like the Preservation Commission a little bit, where trees would be identified. We would describe the trees, the heritage trees that could not be taken down, but then the onus would be on a developer, or at the time we were discussing only non-owner occupied homes, to present it before before the environmental board or a committee to try to persuade a variance to such an ordinance with some sort of a community benefit in return, whether it's planting trees in another part of town or money to back the planting of other trees. So I just want to make that. I love that idea. I think having the environmental board act like a preservation commission, where we've decided which trees cannot be removed, and then it goes before the environmental board or a committee of the environmental board, I think is really interesting. And I think it's very different in terms of, I'm not saying it wouldn't require any additional staff time, but it's very different than staff that goes out to identify trees that are ill and need to be taken down, and the follow-up that's involved in ensuring safety. This is about keeping trees up. So I just want to point that out as we talk about funds that are needed for such a program. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
I think, I guess there's maybe one other member who hasn't spoken, and so we might be toward the end of this conversation, but I am happy to, spoke with Councilmember Newsma earlier on this issue as well, happy to support the proposal, and I appreciate, we're talking about appreciating the work of staff and what they've done. I do appreciate the work of the Environment Board and the recommendation, and I'm willing to support the moratorium, but I think if we are close to finishing the actual ordinance, and the moratorium may give us the feeling that, let's slow down, we have more time to work on the permanent ordinance. I think, not passing the moratorium and then keeping with what Councilmember Revelle and Councilmember Newsma said, which is getting the finished product on the books, before the end of the year, accomplishes a similar goal. That's it. Thank you.
Do we have a sense of what the next steps would be? So is this work going to be done in the Environment Board? How do we get to a finished draft ordinance?
This issue has been referred to the Environment Board, so I think the bureaucratically, procedurally, the Environment Board can pick this up and come back to council with a proposed ordinance.
They meet monthly. How often do they meet? When can we expect something
monthly
back?
meeting.
Okay.
I think we would be able to, the Environment Board would probably be able to take it up at their August meeting, maybe do some homework in advance. So we're looking at coming back to council September, October, if all goes well. Wendy, does that strike you as reasonable?
Okay.
Let the record reflect that Wendy Pollack, co-chair of the Environment Board, has indicated in the affirmative.
Director Knight.
We will be preparing a budget that will be around that time, so I think staff would also need to take a pretty active role to make sure that we would be able to support that. So I think Director Kano and I would need to work with the Environment Board on this to make sure.
Right.
And then one other point, this will add time to reviews for projects. So when your constituents are wondering why their permits have not been received, I just want to be crystal clear that even if we add more staff, that doesn't mean that this will move more quickly. So I just want everyone to be, and we certainly support the preservation of our trees, and staff has worked very hard in instances where trees were proposed to be cut down. Many of the spots in the third ward where people just wouldn't move their projects for the trees. So it will take more time, especially when sometimes what we get from people is not what we can review. So we have to ask for a second revision. We just told somebody not to send a picture of just a box on a piece of paper. I'm completely serious. So I just want everybody aware of that. And then to be clear, are you looking for us to prepare something that shows a review by the Environment Board, or I think we had talked about a fine structure that was pretty significant to reduce the removal of trees?
I'm not sure we know what we're talking about yet. Okay. I don't think the intention tonight is to have that discussion, but to come back with answers to those questions when it does come back to us.
All right, and procedurally, we don't need to refer this back to Environment Board. This is still in the Environment Board. It's just here for discussion. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Do you have enough direction, Director Knighton? Okay. All right. Seeing no other matters before us, I think so. Let me flip it around. D2, yeah, we're good. The meeting is adjourned.